Well, at this point, I'm going to start moving on to the final case plan. This is where you will submit your final case plan for approval at the end of the case. Now, this is a much more detailed process, inevitably, because the requirements are that we check that the events have taken place, we check the disbursements, we check that there's vouchers supporting all aspects of the finances of the case. So counsel's fee notes, court orders. So it will inevitably involve more work for everybody, more work uploading things for you, but also uploading for us to check as well. Now, part of this process requires you to upload documentation. Now, to making this a easy process, that is worth taking time over, because more often than not, we find that issues arise where documentation is either missing or it's very difficult for us to find. If this process is right at the outset when you submit the final case plan, it will actually solve many of the tensions that we see arising at the actual billing finance stage of it. Because obviously the case workers within the high cost family team approve the final case plan, but it then goes over to the finance teams for them to actually pay the bill. And it's really important that the documentation that we have at the final case plan stage marries up with what is then presented in the bill to the finance team. If we have it all identifiable in the one place at the point of the final case plan, then the billing stage becomes so much easier as well. The finance team can see those documents that you've uploaded, and provided that they're in a readily accessible format that's clear for us to view and to see, means that they will be able to go through that process much more smoothly, much quicker, without any need to come back to you for further information. What we would ask you to do is to clearly set out the documents in an order. That's court orders, counsel's fees, and disbursements. And it's possible to sort of label those. And by taking that time, whilst it might take you a bit more time to do it, will save an awful lot of time later on by questions coming back. And we know, we're aware of the tensions that creates because of the delays that arise as a consequence of having to ask more questions, more clarification, and that really holds things up for everybody. Rebecca, I think you're a good person to turn to first around this, because I suspect, this is really your area.
Yes, so I've got a few tips for this this part of the session. One of the things that I think is really important is that you, again, spend the time making sure that your assessment bundle is prepared really well. Everything's included, just picking up on exactly what Anthony just said there. But a few tips from our side and what we do that seems to make a significant difference in getting those back and agreed first time is you'll all know that with your court orders, they can run on for pages and pages. I think a really great tip, it's worth spending the time just highlighting the sections that apply to your events and your fees. So if you've got an expert instructed, highlight the information in the court order where that expert was instructed. If you've got your advocates meeting mentioned, that needs to be highlighted. Go through it and highlight your events as well. Put them in chronological order or an order that makes sense alongside the case plan. Make sure you use your fast checklist. That's the best tip I've got for you in this section, really, because it includes a step-by-step of what the legal aid agency need to see to assess the case and assess it and get it paid first time around. And another little tip is when you're preparing your case plan is to actually use the area where the events are listed and actually put in brackets the date that the event was actually listed. I think that's a really good tip, just to tie the two things together, particularly if you're wanting to claim overruns and underruns. That's it from me.
I was going to nip in and say that one of the things that you'll need from council is endorsed back sheets or attendance notes for all advocates meetings and conferences, and it's worth, as part of this sort of ongoing communication, to ask for them early. Don't leave it until the last minute when you're putting your final case plan together. One of the things I'm doing at the moment is creating our own processes internally. That when we know that a case is concluded, we make sure that we've got all those documents and we send them to solicitors with our final fee note so that they've got them as they start to prepare their final case plan. But it's those sorts of things are things that can be provided well in advance if there's a bit of thought to it. What you don't want to be doing is be ready to send in your final case plan and realise you're missing a couple of back sheets, and then council's on holiday and the clerks can't get them. That would slow everything down for everybody. So it's just one of those things to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I was going to mention the fast list, which Rebecca mentioned, and pick up on that, because that is actually sent out to everybody when the case plan is set up. So everybody has that at the outset of the case. It's really worth keeping that as an aide memoire of the information you're going to need as the case progresses, so that you can create your own portfolio of evidence and the documentation you need for when you get to that final billing stage. So nobody should be taken by surprise. And as Scott has just said, council will always provide information up front. Scott, I'm going to sort of come back to you again quickly, because if providers should encounter any difficulties accessing information from council's clerks, I think you've helpfully said that there's a way that can be arranged through the IBC potentially, and I'll let you explain about the IBC.
Yeah, sure. So I'm on the management committee of the Institute of Barristers Clerks, and so through that I have quite a large audience to be able to send that information out through. We also, Chris Ferrison and I are both on an FLBA mailing list. The FLBA set up a mailing list for all the fees clerks in barristers' chambers around the country, and so we've got a large reach with that as well. So we are trying to use those two avenues to try and educate our fellow clerks and share best practice and hints and tips, and also trying to iron out when people have problems, and we're perfectly happy to do the converse too. So if you as providers of solicitors are having difficulties with a specific barrister, a specific clerk, specific set, I'm perfectly happy to try and step in and try and ease things along. I've been a clerk for 30 years and I know somebody everywhere, and through the IBC I'm sure if I don't know somebody, they know somebody, and through the FLBA mailing list we've got all the routes through, and Chris and I between us have got a lot of contacts. So if we need to, we can find a way of applying pressure if it needs to be done, or just nudging someone in the right direction.